each end of the country working their way towards Wellington and people joining them as they go. And tomorrow there's going to be a crossing of the Auckland Harbour Bridge starting from the northern side. So if anybody feels like getting a carload of people and driving up to Auckland tomorrow, which I'm sure is what you all want to do tomorrow on a Sunday, yeah, it's an opportunity to actually protest about the use of 1080 poison if you feel that way inclined. So yeah, I've got a carload of people coming up from Taupo tomorrow. No spare spaces in my car, but I'm sure we'd love to see you there. And if you do want to know where people are congregating, they're congregating at a place called Opotiki Domain, which is on that North Coast side, on Opotiki Domain, the North Coast side of the bridge, and they're going to be starting to cross the bridge at 12 o'clock. So hopefully it'll be on the news tomorrow, if you don't get to come. I don't know how close they come to here. I'm just trying to think. I don't think they come very close to here at all because they're actually travelling pretty much centre of the island. So I know in my area, for instance, they're coming down through Taumarunui, down your way. So so on that western side they're coming down. I know that they're not going near Rotorua because someone asked. But what you can do, so some people are actually doing their own little hikoi across to meet them and then travelling down, or you can drive across and just walk with them for a day. Some people are only walking, for a short period of time and then stopping, and other people are walking for longer. So, however much you want to do. If you have a look on Facebook, the page is Hikoi of a Poison Nation, and they tell you exactly where they are at any one time, and where you can join up with them. And it also has the phone numbers. You can text the two guys. The one that you'd be interested in is a guy called Neil. He's the one who's, I think, he arrived in Auckland last night.
Yeah, he's in Auckland.
He's in Auckland now?
Yeah. I've got his number too.
Yeah, so his mobile number is on there, so you can always text him to find out exactly where he is. If you ever want to join him anywhere, he will tell you exactly where he is and then you can catch up with him.
Maybe we could just get why did spare sheets over here, guys? Waikato Regional Council. She's not representing council, she's not allowed to, but...
I'm just here as an individual person tonight.
We're going to, we've got a slideshow, we're going to rip through that. just feeds you a bit of information on aerial poisoning in New Zealand. A lot of you might know this stuff, but some of you won't, and there will be stuff here that you haven't seen. So this is a side of the story that you won't see from the likes of the Department of Conservation or TV3. So, and we don't apologise for that. So this is just one side of it you don't get to see. So we're going to flip through.
Before we do, can I just ask a favour, and that is, if you have a question as we go along, can you hang on to it, if you can, until the end? Only because we might actually cover it in here, and it would be really good to have like one big discussion at the end with everybody's questions. So if you would do that, that would be
And we can move faster. We can up our volume as we speak as well, so just yell out if you can't hear.
And also, if you can't hear from the back, there are some spare seats. So feel free to come forward at any time if you either can't see or you can't hear.
If there's a fire, everyone will meet out the front, the doors are open out here, toilets are around the side. Alrighty, so just a quick introduction to just some shots. Aerially poisoning, there's the west coast of the South Island some years back. Obviously helicopters. Tongariro National Park.
This is my part of the world.
I'm standing on a track, like a bulldozed track, taking that shot, aerially poisoned, baits dropping around us. That's the target species, beautiful possum there, Bruce. Good on you, thanks for coming, Bruce. Where am I pointing? Okay, so this is carrot baits, not used as much these days, it seems. The carrot, that's raw carrot, and then the poison is applied somewhere along the chain there, and the bait's then cast from helicopters. Serial bait and stream. Typical warning sign. Nothing on these signs ever says dangerous to humans, and yet it's deadly to humans as much as it is to anything else.
It also doesn't tell you that there are baits and carcasses in water, which is something we've complained about. And also, just go back one more, please. Just you'll see that there's a little picture here with the size of the bait and a size of a dollar coin. I don't think Doc still puts this on pictures because we discovered that kids were going looking for the dollar coins. They were looking for the baits because they thought there was a dollar coin next to each one.
So I've never seen it since it was a Coromandel drop. So we filmed the young fellas talking about where they were finding the baits, and they mentioned the dollar coins. And of course, thank goodness the poison guys took that off, never seen it since. Front of Lake Togor, poison signs, not a good look, is it? And yes, that was the operators that put that there. 2015, Kaka, found dead, yes. At the moment I'm saying this, it's anecdotal until I show you the facts, but Robin, Weka, which I can hear calling out here.
It's great to hear them calling here, by the way.
If you want to feed.
I don't hear them right.
Touch the right, Weka. Tui, yes. Several baits, so certain species of birds will eat baits directly, others are eating insects, others are consuming carcasses, such as this Weka. Very important, you see, that you don't be dropping aerial poison into the environment with the likes of Weka, because they are omnivorous. So are kiwi. Example there, Weka running off with a rat. So this was a study done in 97. Just points out here different species of birds known to eat, or it says the species there, including kiwi, Weka, moorpork, a bunch of them. Since this list was compiled by these scientists, there's further species that have been added that have been found there. It just mentions here though the likes of kiwi. Back then, they were occasionally exposed. Eat baits? Yes, no one way back then to eat the baits directly. And the risk of non-recovery, if the poison drops continued, is high. And so that's what we find when we're filming kiwi and poison forests, that they're doing very poorly, as opposed to where there's no poison used. And of course this is, 21 years ago. Examples of insects that are impacted.
This was done quite a long time ago, this particular journal article But the thing that's really important about it is that it highlights all of the research that's been done that shows all of the invertebrates that are killed by 1080. It's got examples of 16,000 dead and dying bees observed. Bees are pretty important in terms of pollinating. It's got everything from fleas being killed by feeding on poisoned rats. It's also got aphids killed from eating plants which have been poisoned by 1080. So there are lots of different ways that you can actually poison invertebrates. But the thing about this that was really important was that this scientist was saying your insectivores, those birds that eat insects, are at extreme risk. If you've got rare insectivores, you do not want to put 1080 in a place where it's likely that they'll be poisoned through eating insects. So really important to remember that because we have a lot of insectivorous birds.
Okay, this was a study done by Department of Conservation back in '92. That was the one where they discovered that the kiwi will eat the cereal base, lured with cinnamon, and that stuff's dumped all through the forests these days. Operation Nest Eggs is Tongariro stuff. What have I got?
So this is important just to have a look, like Tongariro Forest. This is actually responding to an Official Information Act request that Clive did, and it was asking about when the forest has been poisoned and what kind of, and basically what kind of results they have from it. You probably can't see this at the back, but it says that they started poisoning in 1976. They have a bit of a period where they didn't know what happened, like between 1976 and 1988, they don't have much data. But then it's got that it was poisoned in 1989, 91, 95, 96, 97, 2001, 2006, 2011, 2014 and 2017. So if you thought that it was going to fix the problem in one or two operations, that isn't what happened. But the interesting thing about it is what kind of benefits have you got from all of that poisoning?
So I also asked the Department of Conservation, this was a few years back, how many ferrets have been trapped in the Tongariro, and there's a lot of traps all through there. And the answer was only two. One in February 2009 and September 2009, that was a 5-year period. And so you have to ask, with all this poison's going into that forest, and they're getting such a great, there's so few ferrets, what's killing all the kiwi chicks? That's just one season's kiwi chicks here. And you look here and they're all attributed to muscular predation. Boom, boom, boom.
There are quite a lot that say misadventure. So we don't know exactly what misadventure is, but yeah, it's obviously not a good thing. But the interesting thing here is when you look at the bottom, only 2 are known to be alive as at 2017.
Of that lot.
Of that lot.
It's a lot of stoke food really going into that. Just an example of just a graph. It just shows here 2006-2007 eggs produced by the kiwi, monitor kiwi. You see a trend going down over time, not going up. You think it would be increasing, but those egg production's going down on a scale. That's back to 2013. They're still dying in high numbers in the Tongariro.
So can you go back, sorry? So the people at the back might not be able to see that the blue bars are actually the eggs, the green bars are the chicks monitored each year, and again the red is showing you how many are alive as at 2013. So you can actually see not a huge increase in terms of numbers that are alive. Out of all of that toxin.
Yeah, only of that year there, 23 chicks, only 2 known to be alive at 2013. Cost by betters that those will probably be dead too by now. Kiwi live a long time, over 30 years, so you'd if you like that, but live longer than that. Now, pukaha's another example of kiwi.
So look, the reason we've got this up here is the Pukaha project, which is down in Mount Bruce in the Wairarapa, is an open sanctuary. If you go down there, you see all kinds of birds, including kiwi. This was in the restoration restoration report that came out about the area. And a thing to note from here, because they talk about Cargo, Kaka and Kiwi being released into this reserve area, which is 942 hectares. But it says these species have significantly benefited from ongoing pest control, with the resident populations of all species increasing. So just remember that.
So 942 hectares, this is a great example for predator-free New Zealand, this Mount Bruce puka, because there's no fence around it. It's only 942 hectares, $3 million spent on the place over the last 15 years.
It's got one of the most heavily tracked areas.
1,100 bait stations, that's the area there, saturated. Toxins of all kinds, these are some of the ones here, some I can't pronounce.
Yeah, so lots and lots of different anticoagulants. So you've got some of your first generation anticoagulants and second generation ones. You've got 1080, you've got that cold calciferol and all kinds. Lots of toxins used there.
But interestingly, they thought they'd switch to 1080 in 2013 aerial, first time, 2014 aerial, and 2015, 3 consecutive or successive.
I think they did 2016 as well, didn't they?
Sorry, that was 2013 was bait station, so they did 14, 15 and 16, correct. And just an example of some of the species there that have been detected with poison in them. Kaka.
So it's important to point out there that although they found kaka with poison residues in them, they don't test kiwi for poison residues.
So those aerial drops, and that was saturated, typical flight lines, toxin flight lines go across all the waterways, so it's saturated in 1080. They're saying it was a successful operation. No mustelids were tracked during the post-operation mustelid monitor. Kiwi chicks successfully hatched and released in 2013, equals 19. 2014, 15, 16, 9 in 2014, 7 and 15, 3 and 16. So there's an obvious trend going in the wrong direction there. Radio tag monitored kiwi released into Mount Bruce since 2003, 120. Kiwi reported dead or missing, presumed dead, 110.
So this is really important to remember. That's a lot of dead or missing kiwi.
So this here is another example. So you expect that project to be working. It's an experiment. People are trying to make it work. They're not trying to kill the kiwi. But it's not working. And interestingly, no kiwi have been translocated out of Mount Bruce. So it's not producing kiwi chicks to go to other areas as you'd like to hope.
So going back to that statement they made in their restoration report where they said that the resident populations of all species was increasing and that they all significantly benefited from the pest control. The interesting thing about that restoration report is they gave no data for kiwi. The only way we know this about the kiwi is because we did an Official Information Act request. We followed on from the locals who had also suspected something was going wrong there. We asked for information about the kiwi, and that's how we found out that out of 120 monitored kiwi, more than 110 were either dead or gone missing.
So that's certainly not increasing.
No, and it's also, it shows how people aren't transparent about those negative results. And it's really important to remember that.
Especially for predator-free coming up in our face all the time. So 3 million spent. It's only 942 hectares, saturated with traps and poison, and including 3 aerial drops. Total number of hectares, 942. Okay, number of hectares in New Zealand, 27 million. The cost of achieving Mount Bruce success, if it's a success, is 7 million and 20 million every year. So you can see the costs involved in trying to do these sorts of intensive eradication projects. And this is just a quick look at the Opotiki Valley, which is over towards the edge of the Uruwera National Park in the Whirinaki. It's a beautiful little valley, so a lot of you guys will know it. It never aerially poisoned in there. My old man's been hunting it since the 60s, mid-60s, and we go there regularly these days. Kiwi doing well there. That's just a shot of it. There's a road that goes right up the valley. Pig hunters use it. Never been rat controlled, or up until this data anyway. No rat control, no stoat control, just possum.
So this was another Official Information Act request, just confirming that it had never been aerially poisoned with 1080 or any other.
And so here's a forest that's never been treated with 1080 ever. And since 1999, the Department of Conservation has managed to remove 91 kiwi eggs, it's just a small valley, and 7 chicks from the Okahoo Valley. And none were put back, so they're using it as a kiwi factory.
And by the way, the iwi didn't know that they were being taken out. When they found that out, they weren't very happy about it. But it is really important to look at that comparison between
Yes.
a valley like that.
A poisoned as opposed to a non-poisoned area. 1960s, 70s, heavily logged in the Okahoo as well. So those kiwi, if no kiwi have ever been released into there, they've all managed to survive the logging, right? That place was just smashed. They've managed to survive the logging and pig hunting and hunting quite happily. You hear them calling in there. Everyone's happy in there.
The habitat is very good in there, and I guess that makes a difference.
And once again, 120 kiwi released into Mount Bruce. And the Okahoo Valley, this area are asked, well, it's actually half the size of that Mount Bruce, the area they're talking about. So, none. So, kiwi introduced to Okahoo? None, 500 years, 0. Yet they've managed to pump out the kiwi out of the Okahoo and kill them off in there.
So can I just mention one thing about this as well, which concerns me, because when people are taking kiwi out and they're not putting any back in, it also skews all of that data. So, if you're wanting to compare a poisoned versus unpoisoned area, if you don't know that, if you don't know that the chicks and the eggs have been removed, then that data is almost meaningless. Or if anything, you think the results aren't very good in that unpoisoned area. So you need to know the whole story in order to figure out how well something works or doesn't.
That's right, because those 99 kiwi that were taken out has impacted that population. They would be doing really well if they were left in. Touching on deer, we all know what happens to deer in poison drops, I think. They suffer badly, deer. Over 50% of the population are killed in every aerial drop. We've found many, probably hundreds of poisoned deer over the years, and they all look different. This one's obviously bursting out its eyes. Every orifice in its body is swollen and bursting. So the people that use this poison, I think there's something wrong with them because they don't seem to pay attention to what they're actually doing to a lot of animals out there.
Can I just say at the top there it had PCE. That's the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment who said that 1080 is moderately humane.
This is just an example I saw in a TV3 propaganda document a couple of days ago. They talk about you can go back hunting if there's been 100 millimetres of rain. It's safe to go back hunting, but this carcass is 4 months. It's a deer carcass, 4 months after an aerial drop. That's still toxic. So you certainly don't listen to the TV3 propaganda in their documents, I'm sorry. Just looking at the Aurelian safety data sheet, this is the official 1080 warning label. That's just pointing out that where practicable, that exposed bodies of all poisoned animals should be collected and destroyed by complete burning or deep burial and a landfill approved for hazardous wastes. Dehydrated carcasses may remain dangerous to dogs or cats for an indefinite period, and people and anything else. A single mouse poisoned by 1080 could contain enough poison to kill an adult dog.
So pretty important to point out at that stage that it almost never happens that those carcasses are removed. Apparently, if you request it, if your land is being poisoned, it's possible you can persuade them to actually remove those carcasses. But in forests, they actually just kick them off the tracks when they walk through, or they leave them where they lie. So those forests are a risk for a very long period of time.
This is a bit historical now. This warning, this lethal dose table, it points out that humans there, 3 kilograms of bait per hectare, 23 people it could kill. Beryllium, the government-owned factory, has now altered that, and it's at least 3 times as toxic. So the amount to kill I think it's 33 people per kilo of bait at the moment. So you saw on the news the other night, some of you may have seen old Paddy stopped in 10-8 on Stewart Island. That was enough poison in that 75 kilo area to kill 2,500 people. It's very toxic. Just 2.5 baits, 12 gram baits can kill an adult person. And that's where it says here, as little as 30 grams of bait, where the bait contains 0.15%, which is the current loading for standard aerial drops, that can kill a person. That's 2.5 12 gram baits. So don't let anyone tell you this stuff's not toxic. Okay, we'll just touch on the TB story. I did an OIA a couple of years back. 5-year period, I asked how many TB positive possums in the North Island. There's just one case. Gee, I tell you, just one. It's very rare to have a possum found with TB.
So there's more obviously in the South Island, but yeah, there are an awful lot of TB-free operations in the North Island, and it's interesting that there isn't a lot of justification for it being in the wildlife.
And of course, deer and pigs they don't transfer TB. They can't transfer TB. They can get TB. They die from it. They're a dead-end host. They're an indicator perhaps of TB in an area, but they don't pass it back to cattle. And it's questionable whether possums do either. Very little research on that.
But
It's probably they don't.
the other thing is, with if it really is the case that there is this TB, this bovine TB in the wildlife, you would think that there'd be extra incentive for them to pick up the carcasses and take them away. Because when you leave them out there for pigs or whatever animal might scavenge it, you run the risk of transferring any kind of disease. So yeah, it does make you wonder why they don't do that.
So Richard Prosser, parliamentarian from the last term, while he was in Parliament, asked questions about TB. 124,000 necropsy possums in 10 years. Only 54 possums were positive in 10 years. 7,000, as you can read.
Just in case you can't, at the back, 7,700 pigs and only 18 positive.
So this is OIA information, it's not invented. Just examples of herds of cattle, how low the rate of detection is. There's a lot of false negatives. Is that the false positives?
They have both, false negatives and false positives, so the tests aren't particularly reliable. But this is showing you how, how few cattle actually do have it. Well, that was until 2015.
10 million total cattle there, 141 positive. So a lot of them are you're going to work as a false reading, and when they get there they realise they haven't got it. Based on world standard, New Zealand's TB-free already, so that's just the way it is. People say cereal baits, I've heard them recently, even Department of Conservation and TB-free talking of not many baits go in the streams, just the small streams, the odd one goes in. It's a lie. It's a lie. When the aerial operation's undertaken, the baits are dropped. Well, this is just saying what the warning is in water. Don't drop it into water. Harmful to aquatic organisms. And also states somewhere here,
avoid pollution of any water supply with pellets or used container. So you would think from that means that they wouldn't drop across water.
And another part of the label says, take measures to minimise the chance of baits accidentally entering any body of. So it says it on the label. And of course, 1080 waste are ecotoxic, so it's ugly stuff.
So yeah, basically this is just saying birds and mammals feeding on carcasses of contaminated animals may be fatally poisoned. So this is where it says take measures to minimise the chance of baits accidentally entering any body of water.
Crayfish will consume the bait as soon as they go, and they're just food to crayfish. Crayfish can consume an entire bait, then the crayfish is a walking bait itself. So it's a pathway. There's lots of pathways that we don't know about with this poison. So this is Waikato Regional Council, one of our resource consents, allowing the poison operators to discharge to land and water. Onto land and into water where it may enter, onto land and into water, anyway.
Onto land and water and onto land where it may enter water. So basically it can go anywhere.
Okay, Mount Karongia aerial operation, this will be the same thing if this Rakura operation goes ahead. These, you can't see it, it all looks like a big pink mess, that's 12,000 odd hectares. Those are the top of the flight chart lines. So that's a record of where they're dropping the poison, not where the chocolate's flying, just where the poison's going. There is not a single stream buffered, and there's hundreds of streams all through that mountain. Completely saturates it. So the baits are always dropped into the water at the same rate as the land. The other one here, Turangi, that's Lake Roto Banamu. This is about to get a poison drop again, so the people down there aren't happy about it. Aerial toxin lines all through. There's a little buffer there for some house or something or other in there, or a small pihanga, or the whole lot.
And that's Lake Taupo up in the top right-hand corner.
Up here. So the drop this year is 30,000 hectares, and they've upped the dose a little bit, just to really give you the fingers. So 3 kilograms a hectare. So
and this area was only poisoned 2 years ago. It's due to happen again this month.
Just talking about the RMA, people are permitted, you're allowed to draw water out of streams to feed your house and your animals. It's legal, you don't need to be registered, you don't need a resource consent. Now, this is important for people who are going to be living around boundaries of operational areas. If you live right next to the operation, you'll be informed within, I think, 48 hours of when the operation takes place. If you're just down the road a little bit, but within 3 kilometres of the aerial operation, you'll only get up to maybe 2 months notification, or you'll have to keep an eye on the paper, or you'll just have to listen to your name, whatever. You just might not know. It happens a lot. So if you are within 3 kilometres of a drop boundary and you draw water for your whatever, you are entitled to mitigation. So you're entitled to get an alternative water supply if you want it, but you have to ask. And the problem with this, most people don't know they're entitled to it because they've never been told, and you aren't told.
So this is quite important in my area. This is happening at the moment, so this month. And the thing that has really affected me is that I've realised how few people are registered. So very few people get told about the day that it's happening, and very few people get told that they need to disconnect their water supply, and they simply don't know that they are entitled to either tanker water or bottled water.
So in 2015 I was filming on the Coromandel Peninsula, and there was an aerial operation. The choppers were flying up the back hills, but the locals couldn't see it, and they're all drawing water. And I've got this video clip on TV while there, and it's interviewing these people, and some of them are rushing back when they find out that, quick, we've got to turn off my thing, you know, I'm pumping this water in, and one guy's supplying 70 homes, and he's pumping and dropping, and they just weren't told, and they had no idea that's happening around the country, so it's not rare.
So this again is this just came through from, this is to do with the public health unit. So Toi Te Ora, they only just sent me this within the last week, and this is just confirming that buffers or exclusions aren't set around streams within an operational area unless there's a source of a water supply. So they put a buffer around the public drinking water intake. But any of those other streams won't get a buffer.
So tramplers walking through the parks, they're just drinking from poisoned streams. The parks are open. The only one I'm aware of in recent times that was closed was Unua, because they didn't want too many Aucklanders seeing all the baits in the water, no doubt, and the animals and stuff flying around the place. So this is the medical officer of health. This is straight from the horse's mouth, saying you don't bother to buffer anything, unless it's a one take. And there's only like one or two in an area of operation anyway, so the rest is saturated. Just a quick example here. This is why I moved dozens of people where I was filming. It's 1 kilometre from the drop boundary to there, all drawing water. No, not one registered take. So only the registered takes are warned. And then I asked the Department of Conservation, why didn't you tell the people? Why didn't you go up and walk the streams and tell the people you're putting poison into their water? And their answer was, this is in an email, it was not a requirement from the Waikato District Health Board for us to walk all streams to find unregistered water intakes to mitigate
To undertake mitigation.
as part of the Southern Coromandel Pest operation. And it's the same thing everywhere. They're not required to, and they don't bother because they don't give a damn.
Okay, so this is just an example from my council, Waikato Regional Council. This was when Clyde was also a councillor. He was the councillor for the Coromandel area. We ended up getting unanimous support around the table to include the issue of protecting waterways from 1080 to minimise actual and potential adverse environmental effects and effects to public health within our regional plan change. And that's actually really important because that sets all the rules for what's allowed to happen in your area. So although we voted for this and everyone agreed with it, this was in 2015, nothing's happened yet. Nothing's happened yet.
Waikato Regional Council is one of the biggest poisonous regional councils out there. So this was quite a victory. It was humorous as well in some ways, but when we were in council we did get one thing passed. We've got a small change to the warning label. Poison baits or carcasses may be present in waterways, and they've never been used, but it's just an honest thing. It just should be on the labels, but it's not.
And this actually came about because of what happened on the Coromandel Peninsula, that we knew that a lot of people weren't warned about it being in their water. And so we said the least we could do is put it on those warning signs so people know. And so, yeah, our area decided to do that, but no one else has decided to do that. And the Department of Conservation hasn't decided to do that, and nor has TV3.
And you know, it's a disgrace that we did that. You know the trouble we went through, and I was ridiculed. And the newspaper article said, Councillor forces change. I mean, I don't know how I forced it, it was a vote. But in any case, so, you know, you look at that and you go, well, the doc will say, you can't have that on there because what will people say? What will the tourists say when they see that? And what, you know, I'm walking the track and my kids are there and they go, there could be baits and carcasses in the water. So it's best to leave it off.
We also raised it with the District Health Board, and remember the District Health Board at the meeting we went to said, if you put that on the sign, you'll unnecessarily worry people.
Just take it off and just put the poison in there and don't worry about it. Just an example, 110 pathways again, some of you will see Disney Paradise is a shot from there. This chap shot this bird, it was alive when he shot it, reportedly, but he shot it, plucked it, decided to check the stuff, crop, gizzard crop, and it was all green, otherwise he was just going to take the breasts and you know, put them off. So you just don't know where this stuff turns up. As we said, like the crays, whether it's eels, whether it's an animal, bird picks up something, flies it out, next thing your dog's dead, and you can't understand why. Just examples,
Okay, so this one's quite important. I mean, that other horse was Turangi. It was one of a number of horses that were killed. But this one here, 252 sheep and lambs were killed in Ratanui And so Southland Regional Council negotiated with the landowner. Now this is really important because what we realised from this was that they said here that they had paid compensation for the sheep. May I remind you of our agreement to maintain strict confidentiality. So again, this lack of transparency is really significant. It's dangerous, it is dangerous, because it means that your community doesn't know what the risks are, and when people give you the literature saying, oh, it's all completely safe, you believe it, because you don't know things like that happened. If you did know things like that happened, you might actually say no to the poison drops happening.
Just another example of misinformation. Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment stated in her report, 8 dogs have died in 4 years from 1080 poisoning. Reportedly died from. The facts are way different. Dr. Joe Pollard undertook some research and found. Councillor, could you read?
Yeah, so this was a study that was done by the National Poison Centre in conjunction with Otago University's pharmacy school students. They contacted a whole load of vets just randomly. So they found 125 vets and they asked them to tell them how many cases of 1080 poisoning they'd dealt with. And what they came back with was that over 65 dogs died in a single year. And because obviously most people don't take their dogs to the vet if they're killed when they're out in the bush, this number is going to be just a fraction of the overall total. But this just goes to show you how the government agencies don't necessarily have it on record how many dogs have been killed.
She didn't bother to look.
She didn't bother to ask.
It was just a joke. The whole thing was a joke. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. Okay, rats. The route Cooper drop, is it done for what's the justification out there? Does anyone know if this goes ahead? I've heard a whisper it was for rats.
Deer probably.
Deer, yeah, that's probably more like it. Yeah, in any case, the worst thing you can do is poison rats with 1080. Just an example here of aerial operations. This is a guy who tracks. That guy back there, he's got tracks, so he does it with dock. Well, returns the information to dock. Aerial drop, rats knocked down, but very quickly, within 12 months, back up and exceed what they were 12 months previous. Very short term. So this was following on from that data. Once again, an aerial drop in 2016, 0 rats, caught 80 traps. So the traps stay in the same place, they aren't shifted. They're just there, box traps. They've been there for a couple of years. What's interesting is you can get 70 rats and every 3 weeks it's checked. You think, well, that's got rid of those rats. Comes back the next 3 weeks and there's 80. It's incredible. It is incredible. So just an example, this is when he's checking, just building up, 12 months, 75 rats. It's just unsustainable, doesn't work, causes rat plagues. Just some quick data here from Doc's information, and it's always the same. You're best not to target rats with 1080.
Yeah, so these are all from either Doc's newsletters, from scientific journals. So this one here is pretty important. Yeah, I mean, ship rat abundance indices increased nearly 5-fold after possum control and remained high for up to 6 years. Intermittent control of possums and ship rats may have the net effect of increasing ship rats for most of the time. The interaction between pest species is poorly understood. For example, rodent numbers sometimes increase following possum control operations, which may lead to an increase in stoat populations, and that's because stoats' main diet is rats, and it can lead to a consequent decrease through predation of some bird populations. So inadvertently, you can actually create increased predation on birds by doing pest control.
Because rats are food, and they're important food, for part of the ecosystem because they feed cats and they feed mustelids. Interestingly, in the Urewera National Park, we have very low rat numbers, but we have low all sorts of pest numbers, and it's never been aerially poisoned, yet the kiwi populations are thriving in there, where there's a lot of kiwi, wild kiwi. Yeah, just another example here, 18 months after an aerial operation. Possums, possums are easily targeted, so they knock down. They only have, one young a year. But the rats, boy, they can really come in hard.
And that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says that rat numbers have increased to higher levels than prior to baiting and compared with sites that weren't poisoned.
Very important. And they know this stuff, so they know they're not doing it for rats. Okay, touching on pigs, guys, we're nearly through this, so we can then get down to some ideas and things. Pigs, yep. Pigs, it's dangerous stuff, if you're a pig owner. This is Australian stuff. It's important, you might not be able to read it, it's important to remember that some pigs can take up to 48 hours to die and may travel up to 8 kilometres from the baiting site. So you could have a pig crosses out of the operational area, no warning signs, ends up in an area that someone's hunting in. As would be the case, I guess, with the Cochran family, the Indians, three that were poisoned. So pigs can survive high levels of 1080, and some argue that they can become
tolerant to it, so they can carry quite a lot of it before it kills them. So that does create an additional risk to people who are hunting pigs. So this is Charles Eason who wrote this, and he's sort of the guy, the scientist who's done most of the research into 1080. It's interesting here that he's talking about there being, quite a big risk to humans from consuming animals that have received sublethal doses. However, no published data addressing these risks exist for pigs or humans. So there is still a big data gap there. There's a lot that we don't know about those sublethal impacts of 1080. Now look, you're not going to be able to read this, and it's not about 1080, this one. This is actually about the poison Brodificum. You might know it as the rat poison that you often buy from the supermarket or from a hardware store. Brodificum these days is normally used on islands, or it's just used in bait stations. But the thing about this was, when we were doing a study in council, we asked for some monitoring results, and we asked Auckland Council, because they had a monitoring program, what results had they found from testing pigs. And they came back with this letter, and they said that out of the 14 pigs that they tested, 13 of them were positive for Brodificum. It's an anticoagulant that builds up in the liver until you get to a fatal dose. It's quite dangerous. Obviously, it's really dangerous for anybody who's hunting pigs.
Brodificum causes, it's an anticoagulant, so it causes bleeding. And interestingly, it's used a lot on the Coromandel Peninsula in bait stations. It's given to the local community groups to just spread around, and a lot of it's just biffed out. Like cast, just hand cast.
They're using it all over the place here too, man.
Right, it's very dangerous for pig owners because the Department of Conservation's own policy on using Brodificum, they say it must not be used for possums, it shouldn't be used for pigs at present. And of course pigs are present pretty much everywhere, so DOC's pretty strict on it, but in those regional council areas, district councils, even parks, sometimes they're using this stuff. And it's very persistent.
They often give it out to farmers, and they do say, to use it wisely, that it should be used in bait stations, but you've got to remember that an animal that's been poisoned by it may not die right there. It might die somewhere else, where your dog or your cat might get at it.
So, we did 3 video films with these people, with this case. And it was quite a fascinating case because of the desperateness of the agencies to not investigate it. It was quite astounding. If you haven't seen any of those video clips on tvwild.co.nz, have a look.
So you probably can't read this. This is the Cochran Botchman family were given a wild boar by a local pig hunter. We know that the pig hunter's dog died around the same time. So 3 members of this family were poisoned when they ate the boar in a curry. And the interesting thing about this is the very first working diagnosis at hospital was that it was most likely to be 1080 or another toxin used in pest control. So you would think that that was the very first diagnosis, the working diagnosis, that they would have tested for it.
The very next day, that diagnosis was biffed and it was switched to botulism. And of course, botulism had none of the effects. They had none of the effects that were actually consistent with botulism. And
so nobody tested the patients, the curry, or frozen pork for 1080. They did do a whole load of tests for botulism and many other things which were far more unlikely. They finally did the urine test 18 days after hospitalisation, and that was because a whole load of people were putting pressure on them and asking for the test results from this family. Because of course a lot of us thought it was 1080. I'm sure lots of you thought it was 1080. And so they finally tested it, they tested the urine, but the problem was there's like a protocol, there's a time limit for testing things, and basically 18 days was outside of that time frame.
2 days with urine samples can be diminished and it's gone, so goodness knows. But it was also interesting that the pig hunter, so when that first diagnosis came out of a possible pest poison, 1080, the doctor recommended that perhaps the police need to be brought in to undertake testing and to test and see what it was. That never happened either. In fact, no one ever visited the pig hunter. So not the police, not the district health board, not DOC, not anyone went and actually asked the pig hunter what happened and where he got the pig. Kind of strange, don't you think?
And it's now officially called an unidentified neurotoxin. Like that's what they said the cause of the poisoning was. They couldn't identify what it was.
If we didn't intervene on that particular case, those people wouldn't have, may not have got ACC because it was put down to a bug, and you don't get ACC for getting a bug, you see. But got enough pressure, got them to admit that it was a neurotoxin of some sort, and they got ACC. So there was a good outcome in the end.
And look, it
and they
could have
survived,
mattered
sort of.
because they originally had a bill of $200,000 for the hospital stay and treatment. So you can see why it was important to not allow it to be called botulism when all of the test results came back as negative for botulism. Now you will never be able to read this, but this is a very important letter to me. It was written to me and it came from Canterbury University. So I spoke to this guy who's a toxicologist down there. His name's Ian Shaw, and he had a look at the videos. Yeah, Professor Ian Shaw. He looked at the videos that Clyde had done and the interviews with the family. He looked at the symptoms. He looked at some of the medical notes. And he wrote in here that in his opinion, these people's symptoms were consistent with 1080 and not botulism. And he says in here that he does not understand why they didn't test for it. And he also says down at the bottom that he felt like the investigation was completely awry. There was something wrong with the investigation. It was a very important letter to get. It hasn't helped in the sense that we still don't have a 1080 result, but it actually did at least endorse the fact that it most likely was 1080.
And what's scary to me in New Zealand is we're using the most 1080 of anyone in the world, over 80%. And yet there's never been a case of anyone, apart from one possible some years back, way back, anyone ever being poisoned. Isn't that strange? So there's all this poison going out there, there's all these cases, I guess, of people being turning up in hospital, but there's no appetite to admit that it's 1080 poisoning, you understand. So it's very scary in some ways, because if you get accidental 1080 poisoning, it's not going to be put down as poisoning, it's going to be put down as something else. It's a scary thing, really, for what people can do. And just touching on a couple of things, Ministry of Health, 2008. There were no studies. And, well, they know here that 1080 can cause fetal skeletal malformation, cardiomyopathy, damage to heart muscle and testicular effects, reduction in sperm count in animals. So it has an impact on the bits and the pieces and reproduction. To date though, sorry, I've gone the wrong way there. To date, no known epidemiological studies that have been carried out in relation to teenagers and adverse health effects on humans. That was 2008. You'd think they'd do something, wouldn't you? In the following 10 years. But I put an OIA into them asking, have you done anything? And I said, no, I asked for information. They said, no, we decline your request because the information does not exist.
And this was in 2017. So 9 years later, they still haven't actually checked out what potential harm might be done to humans.
We won't touch on that.
No, I'm just going to tell you, so when we showed you that resource consent before that said that you can spread 1080 across land and water, resource consents don't exist anymore. The government exempted 1080 from the Resource Management Act. They brought in the exemption regulations in 2017. So there are no longer any of those conditions that might protect you during a 1080 drop.
They can just drop.
The medical officer of health can still put conditions on it, but regional councils aren't involved anymore.
Same sort of thing.
Yeah, that's really just saying the government could have brought in a national environmental standard for 1080, but actually they said the potential harm that can be done in a single operation is too great. You can't actually do a national environmental standard for something that might have significant adverse effects, but they were able to bring in exemption regulations. Do you see the contradiction in that?
And this just points out that there's a bit of a conflict of interest between the government and its agencies, because the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Primary Industries are 50-50 shareholders in the company that actually imports the poison and distributes it. So you can see the connection there, that there may be just a problem with them deciding on how it should be used when they're the ones that want to use it and import it and continue to use it.
So look, this is just a list up here, things that we think are quite important for you when you're in a situation where you're about to possibly have a 1080 drop and you've got people consulting with you. We went up to Cairo just a few weeks ago now, and they have the same issue up there, that there's a potential 1080 drop happening in Whangaroa. The thing that they discovered up there was somebody did an Official Information Act request and found that it was being said that all of these different groups had given their approval. But at the meeting when we were there, the Runanga stood up and said, we never gave our approval, but it says in their document that we did. And there were a whole load of other groups who said, we never gave our approval. So what we think is really important is that you don't sign anything until you've talked to your whānau, until you've talked to your community, and you don't go into these meetings with the pest contractor by yourself. Like, go in with them as a group and listen to what they have to say. If I was you, I'd ask them an important question like, can you guarantee that my kai, my water, rongoa, wāhi tapu, all of those things that might be important to you, you'd say, can you guarantee that none of those things will be contaminated? And I want it in writing. Because if they can't give you that guarantee, you shouldn't have to agree to it.
And we urge all people who are entitled to alternative water to make the most of that, get it done.
Yeah, ask for alternative water because it is actually your right. You are entitled to it. As long as you're within that 3 kilometre boundary and you're using a water supply that's coming from a stream that's been poisoned, you're entitled to bottled water or tank water. And the other thing that's important here is Landcare Research says you should have water testing at 8 hours and 24 hours. And the reason that's important is at 8 hours, if 1080's been in your water, it's more likely to come up with a positive result. By 24 hours, it's sort of diluted and moved on, and you're unlikely to get a positive result. But it's important to know that it's been in your water because a lot of you are probably harvesting things from the water. So you want to know if it's been there.
And Mike Meads did show that he was involved in a study that showed that 10A is uptaken by not only the coda but the plant life as well. You can get into the watercress, whatever you like, but it persists in that way into the plants. Okay, so we didn't touch on the flight charts, did we?
Well, we did have a couple of flight charts.
Did we? Oh, we did, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys can visit the TV Wild website here, scroll through it, and you'll see the toxin distribution charts, you'll see information from MOH, Medical Officer of Health, videos, documents, bits and pieces in there, just to back up if you have to present information at any of your meetings, or if you're talking to the pest guys, you can at least say, look, here's an example of a flight chart. It does show that the baits are going in the water. Why are you lying to us? So I think we'll just hit the light.
Yeah, hit the lights, and then if anyone has any questions, that would be great.
Kathleen,
Yeah.
did you hear that Whangaroa has just been postponed?
Yeah, so there's an investigation going on in Whangaroa because they've discovered that in that Official Information Act request that they had said people had given approval who haven't given approval. So there's an investigation happening and that's been put on hold. And that's why it's really important to ask all those questions. Official Information Act requests are really valuable because you can find out basically who has given approval and who hasn't. And you might find out that somebody has said you've given approval when you haven't. Very important to check.
On TV Wild, it tells you how to fill out an OIA. It's very easy. It's just in your email box there, just type in OIA at doc.govt.nz. In your subject line, just put what you want to know and send it off. And they're very good. Department of Conservation will answer usually very well within their 3 weeks they've got, and they're pretty good at getting back to you. So anyone can do it, and you can get the flight charts too. So if you're told, no, the baits aren't going in the water, and then they are, well, then you might have a case to go at them. Any questions out there, people?
Yeah, is there any official information on numbers achieved by these poison drops, like of possum kills?
Well, there used to be monitoring undertaken pre and post. Now it appears that there's less monitoring undertaken, and we used to argue at council. I'd say, why do you celebrate an operation because you've killed possums? And so they were only judging the success of the operation by the number of possums they killed, not on the amount of birds they were saving. There was no monitoring on the native wildlife after the operations. So they call success when they kill a few possums and some rats. That's a success. So there's very little data now, I think, on Bruce Dawson might know a little bit more on that. But
Oh yeah. Do you want to comment on
just
that?
on monitoring, Bruce, any aerial drops?
No, I don't know about the monitoring side of it.
I did just want to say one thing about that though. There is a study that was done in 2016 by a couple of Australian guys actually who came over and worked with scientists here, and they looked at 195 locations that have been pest controlled in the Upper North Island. And what they said was only 2 bird species had benefited at a population level. So that was the tui and the kereroo. So your nectar and berry eaters, who obviously are coming into contact with the bait less than others. And what was interesting about it was that they concluded that actually restoring habitat had more benefit for birds than pest control. And that's the kind of thing I think you're kind of asking, isn't it? Well, is there proof that pest control is actually of benefit?
I could never see what benefit there was in cost relation in using the 1080. I'll give you an example. I used to do a bit of deer stalking in the Kaimais up behind Cattycat, and we went in there for a spotlight one night, and we sat down for about 20 minutes waiting for a bit of noise, and I flicked my spotlight on, and there would have been 100 possums sitting there looking at us. Now there's other options, obviously, in dealing with the possum population than dropping 1080 poison. Decent cages set up with a bit of tucker in there, they'd be in there in their droves. It just wouldn't be. It's not rocket science.
If there's a possum problem anywhere in the country, there's dudes like Bruce Dawson, they'll have dudes saying, yeah, where's that? Because we want to head up there, but they'll rip into it. Here we're in National Park, Waikaremoana area, where I've spent a lot of time over the years, and the old man has, and brother and stuff. That doesn't get any pest control. It gets possums go in there, you apply for a block, you don't get paid to do it. If you're lucky, you'll get a block, and then you run that block for a year or whatever it is. But that's all private enterprise, and that's the only control that area gets. It's from the local, the guys that do the possum blocks. And yet, if you go through the right time of year with the different tophi, whatever it is, flowering, you'll see amazing bird life. And the kiwi are there. We know the kiwi are there because we have ways of knowing they're there. And they're there. We know which families are there, and they're there every time we go through. So you don't get that in the poison forest. Kiwi are hard to find in those poison forests, and even extinct in some areas now. Questions? That's how we're looking for time.
Yeah.
Where does the New Zealand SPCA stand?
So where does the SPCA sit with this? SPCA, I think they're appalled at the use of TNAP. They have a few times been outspoken on it, but I think they get pretty heavily politically hammered when they do speak out. So they rely on funding of some sort, and in New Zealand, being as small as it is, it's hard to continue to get that funding if you're peeing someone off.
I don't know if you remember, they came out with a statement against 1080 at one stage, and Gareth Morgan called on everybody to stop donating to the SPCA.
Oh.
I mean, that's a No, that's right. But you can see, when they are so heavily dependent on donations, it can be hard for them to be too outspoken, but they have actually given a lot of support in the past.
Yeah, we're in contact with them, so we're talking as well, but
Yeah.
Is it possible to get information to put pressure on the ministers that own the factories?
Well, okay, so the ministers, so we'll touch on the shareholding. When the national government was in power, the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Finance, or whatever it is, 50-50 shareholders. When the government changes hands, those same ministers, do you understand? So it's not the actual person, but it's the seat that they manage it. The point is, it's government-owned, state-owned enterprise. Why? If you say, why are they pushing this 1080? Well, we've been filming for 12 years, and we still can't understand it.
Basically what Tim said today, in your letter, Tim, who's actually getting the benefit of it? It's the meat factories that are doing it. That's who's behind it.
There's lots of scenarios, but who goodness knows which one it is.
Yeah, so you've been on this 12-year crusade, and it looks terrible with 1080. Have you ever been able to stop an aerial drop, or is it just happening anyway? And when's this Raukumara going to start?
Yes. So there have been drops that appear to have been stopped or blocked. It's pretty rare because the Biosecurity Act can be used, and these guys have got the power to really just come in and do it. But we think, as we were saying there, if we could get the community members who tick these drops off to get together, and rather than be individual approach to sign off, if they got together as a group, they may have a little bit better opportunity of doing it. 12 years of doing this, I don't want it, mate. We don't want, my brother and I have been doing filming for 12 years of this stuff. It makes us sick, okay, literally, mentally sick as well, deranged. We're getting problematical. We hate doing it, but every time there's a freaking drop, someone say, can you come in? And we go in because we like the wildlife and we film it. And we just continue to do it. What is happening is people are becoming more aware. We can see it, we can feel it, it's happening. And one day this will end. And one day, I look forward to it, some people are going to be held accountable. That's what I want to see. Because what's going on is unacceptable. It's ecocide, it's poisoning people. They have got no idea what the impacts are putting that stuff into the water. It's atrocious. So it's a terrible shame in New Zealand what's going on.
Has there only been that one case of that family that got poisoned? Is that the only reported?
Okay, well, I was hunting, I took this guy's this raw. There was another case he just happened to mention. This guy supplied some goats to some Indian family in Auckland. They all, he rang the guys after a month and said, why haven't you ordered any more goats? And they said, no, very bad, we got very sick, no more goats. Turned out, they were told they got high debtors. What was interesting is you don't get high debtors, you can't get high debtors. So this was a family who went into hospital, same sort of thing. Yeah, so that was another trip up there with the high debtor story. Because so you don't know, that's what I'm saying, how scary it is in New Zealand. When it comes down to poisoning, it could be put down as something else. So you'll never know how many cases there have been. There'll be a heart attack, you'll die of a heart attack with this stuff.
Can I just point out there is a poisoning incident register that was started in January this year by a lawyer, and she's been involved in a court of appeal case which has been happening down in Wellington around that exemption regulations and 1080 and Britificum. So she started a poisoning register. There are 31 cases of human poisoning in there. Not everybody has died. Overseas there have been deaths. Quite a few deaths overseas. Some places where there was one awful incident in a hospital where people were accidentally given 1080 in their scrambled eggs. Unbelievable. Something like 34 people killed. So we do know.
You can see it on TV while I'm just going to incidents and you'll be able to read about that one. So watch your scrambled eggs, especially in New Zealand.
Can I just comment about that? Has it been successfully stopped anywhere? So recently, down in Kapiti, because again, it's about people talking to each other. There's a woman down there who got iwi talking, so lots of different hapu talking to each other. She's managed to, through having everybody singing from the same song sheet, they've managed to stop the poison drop down there. Aroa, as you're talking about, because they found problems with the consultation process, so they think there's been something strange happen in that process. This is Winston Peters' area, of course, and my understanding is he's asked for more information about this case. These kinds of things are what we need to pick up on, like all those places where they've said that they've got landowners' approval. Quite often they'll say they've got 100% approval. If you know in your area that there are people who said no, then you need to make sure that you ask questions about that, because they have to have approval from people before they can go ahead. And when you've got numbers of people saying no, it's much easier than having one person say no, because what happens is, if someone comes to your place and says, we want you to sign off on this drop, and they say all of your neighbours have said yes, it puts peer pressure on you to say yes. But if you know your neighbours have said no, it makes it easier for you to say no. Do you understand?
We had the same thing in council. We asked about the Piranha drop. We said, well, can we have the report, please? Why did people, we were told 100% of people signed off on the drop. We thought, that's astounding. Surely not 100% of people. This is what they were telling council. So we got the data. There it was in the written signed documents. Many of the people didn't accept it at all. They wanted alternatives. And so what is being told to people appears to be different than the facts.
Where is Winston?
Winston's, there seems to be a squeak from Winston that he's looking into things up north because of the up north case. That's his turf, you see. So, and the other thing that's happening today is there is a meeting down at Takanu, is it, or Turangi? And they're talking about using the Treaty of Waitangi as a blocker, if you like. Because why should you be poisoning food, the water, wildlife, when everyone owns it, or everyone should have access to it, and that's taking that right away.
So we're wasting your time rotting the litter. So what can we actually do? Shooting them out of the fucking air. That's what they said.
Go for it.
That's not,
I mean, this whole there's a big food basket for everyone up here. We're into it, and a lot of people are really into it.
what they've asked you to
I can't
do,
see that they're going to be allowed to fly around up here.
yeah, those guys, if people start shooting choppers down and stuff like that, that's when they'll bring in the forces, and they'll love it, because then they can, right, and they can just everyone turn.
Yeah, but it's got to stop somewhere. Someone's
Yeah.
got to
I
do
know,
something.
But there are things happening.
The public turning against you and
There's the
thinking,
Hickory.
that's the other.
Yeah, well,
You've got the Hickory boys going through, you know, they're going to verge on Wellington Parliament. By the time they get there, if they stick it out, quite enough of people are going to turn up there, including myself, you, other people, because you have to admire their determination to do that, because they're doing the right thing. We don't know what's going to do it, but I mean, you look what happened down
they've
at
tried for 12 years, and you haven't.
It can't happen, but it's everyone's doing their bit now.
There
It's just building.
seems to be
Yeah, there's an energy out there, right?
at the moment, and everybody's doing things in all kinds of places. I think there is a tipping point for everything, and yeah, if you can find the places where you can do something about it, either joining forces within your own community, making sure people don't have these meetings alone, that you all have a meeting to decide what it is that you want.
But
And then you
stuff
say-
that those people, like anyone else agrees, how can they still get a job? It's like, if one person disagrees, why is they minority?
There's a crown land.
Yeah, that's
That's
why
why
I said the other one.
everyone goes to know whatever they need to.
I don't have to ask him.
So how they make choices.
Yeah, I know.
We know that in some places, they have ended up with trapping in certain places. Actually, even, so Hapu have a lot of power. They may not realise they have a lot of power, but they do. I know in my area that there were, in the last poison operation that I'm talking about down in the Sikihanga Kakaramea area, there were a number of Hapu that refused to sign and they got trapping on their land. If you know that that's possible, then it's worth actually fighting for it, even when they threaten you with the Biosecurity Act, because they will. They'll say, you have to have this. But you know what? If you say, well, no, we're not going to have it, and these are our reasons for it, and it's, we believe in the, you know, the quality of the water, we believe in this, we believe in protecting our kai, as long as you stay staunch on that, I think you may find that they will not drop 1080 on you. It's a bit of a test, and like I said, the more of you doing the same thing, the better, because they cannot drop 1080 on you if they have the bulk of people saying no to it.
But isn't the coast already tracked anyway? Like, these outfits that are doing these, like, they paying thousands and thousands of dollars
Right.
to have it all tracked. And like, these people in there every day doing it. And they still want to do it.
No, the agency's just hell-bent on using Corsa, unfortunately, and it's going to be people that are going to stop it in the end. It just has to be numbers. And the numbers, as I say, are building. People are becoming more aware. Learn stuff, tell people. A lot of people are unaware it's going into the water. They called us liars for years after we produced our video. I didn't put that there. I thought I would be able to catch that.
I think the thing is,
yeah, so
we discovered even in council, you know, councillors also weren't necessarily told the truth, and sometimes we think the councillors don't do the right thing on your behalf either. But you've got to remember that, you know, sometimes they're going on the information that they're given, and we've found in our council that we haven't always been given that information. So demand to know exactly who has signed off on a drop. Say that you want trapping, and the other thing is offer to do something. You know, the thing is, if you actually say, we're interested in our habitat as well, we want to do something towards restoring it, we want to trap, we want to help you plant, we want to do all of these things. If you offer something, instead of just being angry about
I've already been there and done that.
Have you?
It doesn't do
And it didn't work.
that's frustrating. I know it's
It is frustrating. It is frustrating.
Look, all we can say is the poisoners are turning up in a minute. We've got to get the hell out of here. So it's nearly 8 o'clock. We'll get a split.
We've got to 8:30, haven't we? So have we got more questions?
Will petitions help?
No,
And that we,
not, there's lots of petitions going around. Unfortunately, it's a good idea, but the government's not interested.
Look,
No,
You can't even start a government petition.
I disagree on that. Okay, so I know there've been a lot of
so don't listen to
petitions.
anything I say.
So we don't always agree. But I think when I say a tipping point to everything, I think you should do what you can and where you can. Sign a petition. It's easy to sign a petition. You know, there's this here.
Well, that's a bit
Sign
different.
this.
I'm talking about the stuff that just goes around on...
Yeah.
But what if it was a signpost that looked everyone
Yep.
and they don't agree?
Yes.
Yeah, if it's a
Get
proper
something like
document.
that.
that's it.
You know what happened on the west coast and the South Island?
Yeah.
Somebody went from house to house and got everybody to say yes or no to whether they wanted 1080, and wasn't it 97%?
Yeah, 92% or something was opposed down there on the west coast.
And as a result of that, they took that to their district council, and their district council ended up supporting them and arguing on their behalf.
Yes, that was very good.
Very powerful.
Maureen Pugh.
Maureen Pugh is now in Parliament. This is, you've got to remember, all these little incremental things happen. You end up, bit by bit, getting people who are supporting you because because you do these things. You bother to actually go house to house and get people to sign something. So there is power in that. The other thing is that there are court cases going on at the moment that might make change. So that court case that I mentioned to you, down in Wellington, we're still waiting for the judgment on that. But what they're going to say, they're trying to determine whether or not it's illegal to drop 1080 into a riverbed or Brodicum into a riverbed. It's about what is a hazardous substance. If they say that it is illegal to do that, you might suddenly have a whole load of poison drops halted because they won't be able to do it without a resource consent. We don't have resource consents at the moment. That whole process is done away with. So if that judgment comes out, it might put a hold on 1080 temporarily. But it would still be something quite powerful to have them say that it's illegal to drop hazardous substance into riverbeds, and it should be, shouldn't it?
Well, you see, that Stewart Island case that just happened, it's caused a bit of a stir, you see, little things like that, and so, docs on the news saying, look, it's safe, it's already diluted, it's broken down, it's weak now, it doesn't matter. It's not true, it's very toxic, that can never be put in the water or a swamp. But it's just a case of them sort of saying one thing, but then they're on the phone to the medical officer of health, the police, the department, this and that, because it actually is dangerous and they know it is. But there's little bits and pieces that start to crack. Yes?
Yeah, what's the mandated time that they have to give us, like warning wise?
2 months.
2 months, and then how do they do that?
2 months maybe with a flyer, if you're in the district, if you're in the vicinity, I guess. 2 months with a flyer. It could be a newspaper advertisement, which says when the intended drop will be. So they might say it's going to be, it might be August 24th, but the weather's different, then so it changes, so no one knows. The only people that will get to know properly, will be told, are the ones that live right adjacent. Live right on the boundary. They're the only ones that have to be told, informed of when the bait's going in. Unless within 2 months, the rest 2 months within.
When you see the signs go up, it's a
Yeah, when the sign goes up,
You see the signs
that's
up?
the day.
How hard is it to test for 1080 and whatever you want to test it for?
It's a good question. It's easy to test. It's $500 to test, say, a sample, but I have concerns about who's doing the testing.
Well, no, it wasn't
It just doesn't look reliable anymore. So I have concerns about it, but that's just me. And there's only a couple of places in New Zealand that will do it. and everyone seems to be in on the act, really.
And look, my concern around water is, when I said about it being tested at 8 hours and 24 hours, what happens is when they choose to only test at 24 hours, when it's passed through or it's been diluted, you get a negative test. And what happens with those negative tests is they pull them all together and they use those tests to say, oh, look at all those negative tests. This shows it's safe in water. But it's a little bit like if they went out and tested people who've been drinking and driving 24 hours after they've drunk, and then using that data to say it's safe to drink and drive. That's what it's like to me. It just doesn't make sense. If you know that at 8 hours, if it's been in water, you're most likely to get a positive result, and Landcare research says that's when you should test, then DOC and Osprey and the regional councils, they should all test at 8 hours and 24 hours, because that would enable people to at least know that it's been in their water.
Yes, and it says on that medical officer of health document that tests should be undertaken to show that when it's safe to connect your water up again. So you really should ask for that too. What I'd also like to suggest that you ask for, or demand, is that you want E. coli testing as well in your water. It should happen in the huts too, in the bush. You know, well, I don't know, but it should in some ways if people are drinking. Well, they should have signs saying don't drink the water for 6 months after an operation, in case there's an animal just upstream from where you're drinking, you get sick. And you've heard cases of a bunch of tourists, trappers getting sick in recent times. E. coli type stuff. Well, that's just about it, friends. So, yes.
How hard is it going to be to get independent testing on these poison animals,
So
not government involved, independent to get it true and back to the report.
It's very hard. There's no one who's doing it. No one seems to do it. You've asked before, haven't you, about getting things tested?
So you can get them tested. I went down to Wellington to get tested down with Azure Quality. Now the only thing about it is there are only certain places in the country that are certified to do it. Azure Quality wasn't, like they aren't. So I still got it tested through them because it was the closest place for me to get it done.
Did they not say that you put it down its mouth? That's what they could say though,
Yeah.
You got to fly that person in there, and it's very independent.
But to be honest, the only reason I did it was my own. So we had a whole bunch of, we had loads of trout coming down the Taupo River, dead trout, just after a 1080 operation. And I asked my own council to go and investigate, and they said no, because Doc said it was most likely heat stress, and it was after spawning, and it was most likely natural.
Had a whole summer following one, no trout came floating down the river.
But interestingly, the pest contractor was out gathering up all those fish to make sure that there weren't any lying around for anybody to take away, because they read it on social media that people were concerned. So I had to, because my council refused to investigate it, I had to take a fish to get it tested. But the thing is, the places that you can get them tested are limited. Landcare Research down in Lincoln, Azure Quality does do it, but they're not certified. There are fewer of them. Paul's Laboratories used to do it, but they seem to be saying no now. Also, you can't, there's no test in New Zealand for one of the metabolites of 1080, which is fluorocitrate, and we've been told by Landcare Research it's something that we should test for in New Zealand, but we don't. So again, all of these things, you'd have to send them to Australia. Quite hard to get them out of the country.
Say that again?
We get all that pet food tested from the pet food factory all the time.
Do you?
Who's I think it's a recurrent.
Are they certified? Oh, great. So you go, if anyone has a little sample, put it through to Bruce. All the
So I think the thing is there were a whole load of tests that could have been done on the Kochman family, that you'd actually have to have the, district health board doing the test, are you thinking you could still do that test and still pick it up? Because that's the only thing, because I thought that, it's like they did, they did a test, for instance, they tested the curry 2 months later and got a negative.
Well, we don't know what sample that was, but we have to do actually.
And then go back and like restrict them,
Yeah.
test done months later.
They could do that. They could also test the frozen pig, because there were remainders of the pig in the freezer. So that's held by MPI, and no one has access to that.
So thanks everyone for
That's a
turning
good
up.
suggestion.
Appreciate it. Thanks Tim for organising the call and stuff. Enjoy
If
your
people
evening.
could sign what Tim brought tonight, if you think that you don't want 1080 dropped, make sure you sign. Where is it gone?
Is Coronation Street
Is it gone
started
around?
yet?
You're up to Auckland, Clive.
Oh, I'm going to go to Hamilton.
Hey, good luck to
Oh, too late,
everybody.
mate. I'll come.